Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. Day I was in my senior year of high school. About 10 years ago I grew up as a sort of outcast. I wasn't bullied or anything, but I also didn't really have any friends. I didn't mind that solitary lifestyle, though I went through school, then would come home and play video games and lose myself in digital worlds. That was my escape. So to call it my home life wasn't what I would call bad either. It was just my dad and I loved my dad a lot. He worked so much to provide for me. And when I was young, maybe 10 or 11 years old, my mom got involved with some bad people and their hobbies, if you know what I mean. My dad didn't want to expose me to that world anymore, and we eventually moved away. It was quite messy, but it was for the best. He tried getting her help throughout the years, but she always turned it down. That was all until one day when she just went off the grid completely. It was sad, but we both moved on, and when I got older he would have to leave the weekend once a month for his job. I didn't really mind. Though it may seem crazy to people to leave someone at that age home alone for a weekend, but my dad trusted me a lot. One specific weekend during senior year, when my dad had left for the night, I started my normal routine. My pops would leave some money behind in order to order some pizza and some soda. We never had soda in the house normally, so getting a 2-liter with the pizza was like a double treat for me. My night was beginning to play out just like every other night I was home alone. I demolished the pizza and drank most of the soda, and after a little breather on the couch I went to my room and started playing some PlayStation, and that's how I spent most of my weekends. Even if my dad was home, I would usually play Call of Duty, but Grand Theft Auto Online had just come out, so I had been spending quite a bit of time playing that. After a few hours of that, I decided to play the single-player story mode. The older I got, I seemed to play the story mode in games less, but for some reason on this night I wanted to play something with some more substance, even if it was GTA. Since I wasn't playing online anymore, and I took my headphones off as much as I came. I hate wearing headphones for long periods of time. They really hurt my ears. You know, I'd been playing for a little while when I thought I could hear something coming from downstairs. There weren't any loud or crazy noises really, it was just these sort of small vibrations and little bumps. Now I'd been home alone a ton of times, and I didn't remember ever feeling any of those vibrations or hearing any small noises like that. At the same time, though, it was such a small noise that it wasn't alarming enough for me to actually freak out. It was a little after 1 in the morning. I think it's in all our subconscious is to be a little on edge when you're home alone. At that hour, every few moments I would hear this little scuffling noise. I paused the game and tried to listen, and when I listened, I would mostly just hear more silence, maybe an occasional little bump or something, because I was home alone. Of course, the quick thought of an intruder crossed my mind. I'm embarrassed to say, though, that at some point I thought to myself that ghosts could be causing this. I debated back and forth with myself about this for about 30 minutes. Finally, I paused the game and went over and set my computer chair to just listen in fully for a few minutes without listening to the sound of gameplay or anything else. I noticed that the sounds were happening more regularly now, those little bumps and such. I'd initially blamed it on cracking pipes or house noises, but they started to happen more and more often. The little vibrations I could feel were now happening almost every second. It was like my dad might be downstairs, but the only thing missing was hearing his voice. The thought of my dad coming home early had crossed my mind, but he would have called me or at least poked his head in the room to see if I was still awake. Was I just being paranoid? Was I getting myself all worked up for nothing? I decided I had to go downstairs and check it out to prove to myself that nobody was in the house. Clearly, I was just letting my imagination run away from me. I crept slowly down the upstairs hall and made my way to the top of the staircase. While I was slowly heading in that direction, the muffled sounds were getting much louder, and I started to fear the worst. I thought of calling the police. I was too anxious in that moment, though. In my mind I was thinking to myself, what if nobody's there and I waste the police's time? When I got to the bottom of the stairs, I saw light illuminating the dark walls coming from the other side of the house. The kitchen light was on. It's possible I'd done that myself, but I was fairly certain I had shut the light off before heading upstairs. I was practically crawling my way to the kitchen. I was moving slowly. When I was only a few feet away from the kitchen doorway, I could hear what sounded like someone rummaging through my cabinets that was accompanied by a soft humming voice. I was half expecting to see some big burly scary burglar, but the voice indicated something else entirely. I peeked my head around the corner when next to the kitchen sink I saw a very small woman. Her hair was extremely wild, flowing out in every direction. I had my phone in hand ready to call the police. The situation had me frozen in terror but also incredible curiosity. I realized that this woman was singing Disney songs to herself. I almost fainted right there because instinctively I knew who this person was. It was my mom. She was singing the same song she would sing to me when I was very young. It was one of the only memories of my mother I actually had left. I couldn't move. I must have been trembling because she heard me. She turned around and a big smile lit up her face. Even though this was my mom, it was not the woman I remembered. Her teeth looked rotten and her eyes looked like they were sunken into her face. A voice that should have been soothing was now unnerving. "There's my baby. What are you doing? Awake at this hour?" I didn't respond. I just stood there like a statue. She came over to me and put her dirty hands on my shoulder. "What am I going to do with you? Your father, he's always changing out cabinets. I swear that man doesn't listen." She then started to laugh, but it wasn't charming or calming. It was like she wasn't really there. She turned back around and started humming and started going through the cabinets again. I broke out of my trance and went to my room. I locked the door and called the police. I called my dad too. My dad made sure I was in the bedroom with the door locked. He didn't give me any details, but he said there was a good chance my mother was dangerous and I needed to be safe just in case the cops showed up. And I heard an altercation start downstairs. I could hear my mom yelling at the police to get out of her house. The police knew the situation from myself and my dad, and I heard a brief struggle, then silence for a few moments. I heard a cop shout by name and tell me it was all right for me to come downstairs. I spoke with the police for a little while as another officer drove my mother away. One officer stayed parked outside my house all night until my dad came home to help me feel safer, which I really did appreciate. He spoke with one of the officers. I could tell by reading my dad's body language that he was uncomfortable, and we were potentially fortunate to avoid something horrible happening. My mother actually had 2 knives on her when she was apprehended. One knife she must have had when she broke in, and the other knife was a sharp kitchen knife that belonged to my dad, which she'd stuck in her pocket when she was in the kitchen. She never used them, but the fact that she had them was enough to freak me out. The most terrifying part of this horrible nightmare, though, was that my mother had no idea where we lived. Well, she wasn't supposed to have any idea. We moved away, and we moved far away. My dad never told my mom where we'd moved to protect me. She'd broken into the house by breaking one of the downstairs windows and crawled in. I didn't hear it at all, so that must have been when I still had my headphones on or something. The thought of my mom just humming and walking around downstairs, potentially waiting for my dad while I had no idea, still freaks me out to this day. It's been about 10 years now, and I've only seen my mother twice since that night. She's been in some type of institution for years now. She has no memory of that night, but in all fairness, she doesn't have much memory of anything at all. It's sad, but it's true. Every time I hear those Disney songs, I sort of freeze up. I just hope one day I can forget about the fear I felt that night and find a way to remember my mom in a more positive light. I love metal concerts, the atmosphere, the flashing lights, the pounding of the beat up your spine. There is really nothing like it. That very same atmosphere, though, can be a breeding ground for a lot of dangerous activity. I learned that the hard way at my last concert. I went with a friend to see In This Moment Avatar New Year's Day and my personal favorite Ice Nine Kills as part of their Terror Tour. It sounds ominous already, but trust me, that concert was amazing. They played all our favorites, and like the teenage metalheads we screamed along with all our lungs put into it. New Year's Day went first as an opener, and the flashing lights caused spots in my eyes. Avatar went next, and the first half of their set went flawlessly. They played up the ominous angle of being with the devil between songs, and I got chills as the voice reverberated up my spine. They started up one of my favorite songs from their new album. I remember the gleam in my friend's eyes as she grabbed my arm and shook me in sheer excitement. The music and vocals built and built. The crowd was going absolutely feral down on the floor. I think I even saw someone in the pit get ousted up into the air and crowd surf. The chorus was just about to start when the lead vocalist froze in his tracks, let out a strangled into the mic. The other members stopped playing. A second later, the only sound was the quickly fading reverb from the amps on stage. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Little puffs of smoke from the crowd of bodies on the floor were visible. I could swear they represented someone whose soul had just been scared out of them. People around us started murmuring, everyone wondering what was going on while the singer was trying to compose things. No one would tell us anything. All of a sudden he shouted into the mic, "Security. Can we get security here?" Now the lights in the arena flicked on one by one, flooding the space with stark white light. After over an hour in the dark, it was almost blinding. After a second blinking away spots, we could see that near the front of the stage a small circle had formed in the crowd, giving a wide berth to someone in the middle. That someone was crumpled into a heap on the floor, and they'd started screaming. Security pushed their way through the remaining concert goers and immediately ran to the guy with first aid in tow. They looked like they were struggling to turn him over, and the guy curled around himself as if in pain. I couldn't see very well from where I was sitting, but it seemed like his hands were clasped firmly against his stomach. When one of the security guys finally got him onto his back, the guy's hands accidentally fell to the side. That's when what can only be described as a baseball-sized bubble of blood exploded across his shirt. Apparently he'd scooped up the blood in his hands and was praying it didn't fall out. Security immediately realized their mistake and pressed firmly against the wound. People in the crowd began to call 911, and 20 minutes later EMS and police showed up with the faux flashing lights and stretchers and everything. We were all told to stay calm and were quickly directed outside the parking lot. My friend and I clung to each other through the surge so we wouldn't get separated. I remember that we didn't speak for a long time, even on the drive back. We saw some news that was written about the incident about a month later. Apparently someone thought that when the guy shoved up against them in the mosh pit he was hitting on their girlfriend or something. That's when they pulled out a knife and began stabbing him in the stomach. They pled guilty with the defense that they were extremely high at the time, but that didn't lessen the severity of their sentence. As to how this person managed to sneak a knife past security personnel, we have no idea. It just goes to show you that even though a rough and tumble concert can be fun, it can also lead to reckless or even dangerous situations when emotions are running that high. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.